In this video, we're going to talk about how we can help our dog practice being inside the kennel calmly. This is an important part of a rehabilitation process for a dog that has developed a fear of the kennel. So in the first video, we talked about how to create a positive association. So before you do this, you need to watch that video. Make sure your dog will go in the kennel on command without any hesitation. Once that's the case, then I'm going to take the high value treat, and again, we're going to imagine that this is the front of the kennel. This is where the door is. So I toss the treat in, I let the dog go in, and I quietly get behind the dog, and I don't bump it, and I just stop so that my feet are right up against the edge of the kennel. Now the door is completely open. Now, once the dog, and this is best with a wire kennel so you can look down and see the dog from the top, which is what the Guardian has. So I look down, the dog's going to go in and get the treat, and it's going to turn around and be like, huh. And so it'll stand there. It might try to wiggle its way out. When it does, I'm going to make a hissing sound like a cat is my way of disagreeing. Now, I'm not going to let the dog wedge its way past. Once the dog is stationary, it stands in place. So when it just turns around, if it stands in place, the dog's facing me in the kennel, I take one step back. Now when I do this, I don't do it like this. I don't go, this looks indecisive. Slowness. So when you move through, to communicate through movement, it should be a deliberate movement. Left, right, and that's it. 2 steps only. And I'm keeping my hips pointed at the dog. Keeping your hips aligned at the dog is very important. What's going to probably happen the first several times you do this is as soon as you step back, the dog's going to start coming forward. It thinks that's an invitation to come out. We need to communicate, no, you're not allowed to exit the kennel unless I give you permission. The way I disagree with the dog is as soon as I step back, if the dog comes forward, I step forward to block the exit. When the dog is stationary again, I immediately take a step backwards. Now this is kind of a dance, and the timing is important. So if the dog sits, and then I slowly take a step back, or if it's stationary and I wait a second, and then I move back, the dog doesn't know what it is. If the dog sits or lies down, you immediately take a step back. You want to be stepping back before the dog finishes the movement. It's not going to sit or lie down, probably at this stage first. So, well, initially. So I toss the treat in, I follow behind. As soon as the dog turns around, it's stationary, I take a step backwards, I wait. If the dog stays stationary, after about a second, I take another step backwards. Now don't take too many steps away initially, because if you get too far away, the dog's just going to bolt. And if your dog bolts, then when I move back, instead of taking a big step, I might just take like an 8-inch step back, just very short steps. And I stop and I pause and I read the dog, takes another step back, because it's stationary. And I keep on repeating this process, and anytime the dog starts to come forward, I rush forward. Now if this is the edge of the kennel, you can have a couple of different rules. I mean, my rule primarily is if the dog puts its paw on the ground outside of the kennel, that's I won't allow that. So if it just picks up its paw to come from inside the kennel and go out, that's when I would hiss, when it breaks the threshold. Some people will let their dogs sit with their head outside of the kennel. I've found that if your dog is doing that, it's trying to get its way out. So if it sticks its head out, again, I rush forward. Now when you come forward, it's not to bonk the dog, it's to rush so suddenly forward that the dog has a flinching experience. So you have to be moving rapidly. And again, I usually use the hissing sound. Unless I'm doing a ton of this, then I don't want to hiss, 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 hiss. So as soon as I can get the dog, I can step several steps away and the dog stays in place. Maybe about 4 feet away maximum. You might have to be a little closer if they're a bolter. And if they do bolt, you're going to grab them by the collar, you're going to lead them right back in, and then you're going to step back here, and then you repeat the process. Don't treat them for escaping. Now let's say I'm at 4 feet away and the dog now is just staring at me. I wait at this distance for the dog to sit. When the dog sits, it's communicating, I am challenging you on exiting the kennel less. So when it sits, I want to have a dialogue with it. So as soon as the dog sits, I take a step backwards at the same time as my way of saying, I like what you just did. I agree with what you just did. Now, some dogs do this faster, some dogs do this other, but this is a who blinks first scenario. So don't do this if you only have 10 minutes. The record for me so far is I had a boxer once that took 45 minutes before it laid down. Whoever outlasts the other wins. So you have to be able to stay here for an hour if you have to, because eventually it's going to be, they're going to lay down right away. But you have to start out by letting them know, I am serious about this and I'm not giving up and we're going to be here as long as it takes. So now as soon as the dog lays down, and some dogs will go straight into an LAY, but if it goes, as soon as it goes to an LAY, I have a high value treat. I usually take a knee, or I just squat down and I hold the treat like this and I tell the dog, come, or here, or whatever the command word is. Now in this case, a lot of dogs won't come out. You just got done saying, I can't come out. Now it looks like you're trying to trick me. What is it? When I say no, it's no. When I say yes, it's yes. So if he won't come out, I'm holding the treat like here, I will start lowering my hand, going all the way to the floor if I have to. Sometimes I use a kissing sound. Sometimes I will call the dog by name. And as soon as it comes out, I raise my hand to put it in a sit, and then I lower it and let it lick it off my hand, and I say the word come the same second it touches their lips. So the dog so we're going to keep repeating this process so the dog understands as soon as I lay down, I am granted freedom. Once that's the case, once the dog makes that realization, they're going to start laying down faster and faster. When you get to the point where your dog is laying down within 15 seconds of you telling it to go in the kennel, then you're ready for the next step, and we're going to talk about the next step in the next video.